everyone, this is Storian. Quick trigger warning, there is mentions of blood and a drawing will pop up in just a few seconds that contains a lot of it. I'd recommend closing your eyes, mainly because what I discuss while the photo is up is very important, so I wouldn't recommend skipping it, but if that's what makes you comfortable, go ahead. Also, I am extremely tired when this video or audio is being filmed, so please, if I sound tired or sick, just know I am, but I really want to record this right now. The photo is going up in 3, 2, 1. White paws, soaked in blood, stormed through the plains. He was running as fast as he possibly could, not only for his life, but for the life of those he had watched fall. He had to get back to camp. He had to warn the others. Bonecatcher slipped into the burrow, nearly tumbling down the large slope leading into the camp, catching everyone's attention. Hailstar stood and rushed over. The sight of the blood on Bonecatcher's pelt nearly made his heart stop. "What happened?" he demanded. But Bonecatcher couldn't speak. He could barely even breathe, his mind racing back to what had just happened. Rogues, He eventually choked out, Ghost Puddle stepping forward, gently nudging her son to the ground and checking for injuries. The clan's breath caught. Bonecatcher's patrol hadn't just been any cats. They had been the core of the clan. It was only Ziggy who moved, stepping forward, hesitant but calm, just like always. "I think there's something you all must know." Hailstar whipped around. What? What is it you know?" It sounded angry, but it was clear to everyone. It was out of desperation. His mate and his best friends were hurt. Or dead. "I believe there was a prophecy." Before Ziggy could say another word, Ghost Puddle snapped. "You're not a medicine cat. How would you know?" This did seem to hurt Ziggy, but she continued. "I am no medicine cat, you're right. But StarClan may have still reached out to me." It was Crowpelt who spoke again. "My mother and sister were on that patrol. You're telling me StarClan gave you a warning about this and you said nothing?" Ziggy turned to him. "No, but it may have been about you." Alright, now the photo is gone. That was a bit different than how I've started my other videos. I quite liked it, but it was very time consuming. I wanted to include actual voices. I got friends to pitch in and send me audios, but I wasn't able to actually add them. It kinda sucks, but I made do. I said this in the last video that year 2 was accidentally ended too short, so we'll be going over what happened those 2 moons. On another note, after filming this, I realized I forgot a cat. She's an elder, and we'll talk about her towards the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoy. A lot happened this year, and we had many cats join StarClan. Most were from the massacre from the start of the video. But there were 2 who died differently, one of which being Emberpaw. In the last video, Crowpelt had been injured when the ground caved in beneath him. That was actually a common trend this year. Emberpaw was one of the first cats it happened to. She was out on patrol when it caved in beneath her, and much like what happened with Crowpelt, she blamed Willowpaw for pushing her. She was later diagnosed with head damage, which was the very thing that killed her. The second in the list of cats is Pumpkin Swipe. She died during the massacre. I was very sad to have seen the deputy go, and especially in such a bloody way. She was the first to fall in battle, giving her life in the hopes that her clanmates would live. In the end, it wasn't completely in vain. I will say there was a kitten she started paying attention to shortly after joining StarClan. What that means, I'm not too sure yet. Also, like a few other cats in the group, I'm kind of relieved Pumpkin Swipe was reunited with Creek Catcher. Though we didn't really get to see them together for too long, I think they would still be close friends. Next is Kestrel Stripe and Dayshade. As Crowpelt said before, both his mother and sister died on this patrol. When Kestrel Stripe was alive, she had also been one of the victims of the ground caving in. She was actually with Amberpaw and Hailstar, only for the same thing to happen. She was shaken up, but was unharmed. She was then named Kestrel Stripe for her zeal. In battle, she was overpowered far too quickly. She was one of the cats in particular Pumpkin Swipe gave her life for. Next is Dayshade. During the fight, a part of her seemed to change. She had never really been close with too many of the cats in the clan. At least that's what she believed. She truly still thought that she was there strictly for her kits, though a part of her did realize that her kits were full grown. She could leave if she wanted to. But each time that voice said anything, she'd quickly silence it. It wasn't till the battle when she realized how much she did care about the clan. When she saw Pumpkin Swipe die for her daughter, she kind of just saw red. She ended up killing the cat who killed both her daughter and Pumpkin Swipe, but sadly during the fight, another rogue was able to bite her, actually giving her the scar she's depicted with. Next is Burnclaw. I'm actually kind of making it a bit funny. When she died, the feud between her and Ghost Puddle was revealed. She actually didn't even know that Ghost Puddle didn't like her. And she wasn't too excited to hear that Ghost Puddle had wished her into the Dark Forest. She didn't end up in the Dark Forest, however. There was really no reason for her to be there. She hadn't done anything. Burnclaw was actually not the only one that Ghost Puddle didn't like. Dayshade was also banished to the Dark Forest, or at least should have been by Ghost Puddle's standards. So I like to think the two of them have been sneaking off back into the clan to plant forget-me-not flowers all around the medicine den, and it's slowly driving Ghost Puddle insane. Next up is Sky. A little bit before the battle, she had actually been wondering about whether there were any new prophecies, though she never asked. Her and Ghost Puddle didn't exactly have the best relationship either. It wasn't flat-out hatred like it was with Dayshade and Burnclaw. During the fight, she gave it her all. She ended up taking down some of the rogues as well, but her injuries were far too much, and she wasn't even able to make it off the battlefield. Now, in StarClan, she watches over the few friends within the clan she had and wishes she was able to call more of them her friends. And the last of the StarClan cats this year was Frostbur. As I said in the last episode, him and Sky had formed a strange friendship, and I'm glad to have seen them reunited. They actually died the same moon. He died of a heat stroke just a little bit before the massacre. The rest of the clan won't be drawn in any particular order. I'll try my best to keep in rank and age, but a few of them were drawn together, like these three. Hailstar took his daughter Emberpaw's death very hard, and it only got worse as his deputy and so many of his warriors fell. But in the tragedy came a bit of hope that pushed him from his nest each day. That was Bonecatcher and Bleak Path. The fact that Bonecatcher had been the only survivor made him so much more important to Hailstar. And Bleak Path. He spoke with Bonecatcher. This had been before the slaughter, before Bonecatcher had become jumpy and skittish. He had agreed that Bleak Path had a place in their heart. For Bonecatcher, it was simply platonic. But for Hailstar, it was something much more, and Bonecatcher was okay with that. The same moon that he had to say goodbye to Emberpaw was actually the same moon he was able to say hello to 3 new kittens. But for now, Hailstar has a bit more to worry about. Bleakpath has gotten sick with yellow cough, and Bonecatcher just recovered from white cough. I'd like to mention there was a comment on year 1, somebody talking about how much they loved Bonecatcher and Bleakpath. I really hope nothing happens to Bleakpath. I really do think that this little family is just simply adorable and wish nothing but the best for them. I also like to say that all of Hailstar's kits had been drawn together, or at least most of them. They'll be probably the last cats we go over. This does include his adopted kits with Bonecatcher, whom all now see Bleakpath as a mother. The next 2 cats are probably the most interesting out of the clan, at least for this year. First we have Ziggy, and then we have Crowpelt. They had a bit of a fight when the prophecy was revealed, but then Crowpelt started getting strange dreams and randomly blacking out with visions from, well, StarClan. At least that's how they phrased it. In truth, he just had a very good knack of seeing the future, and oftentimes it overshadowed his reality. He didn't really know what to do and went to the only other person he thought would understand. He considered going to Ghost Puddle, but in her current mood, the whole clan seems to be kind of tiptoeing around her. The day of the slaughter, Ziggy woke up. It was barely even moon high, but she couldn't go back to sleep. She slipped out of camp, hoping to try to figure it out. She returned only a few minutes before Bonecatcher, and that's when she told of her dream. The sounds of wings beating in the wind, the sound of a heated argument, and whispers of a deed long past. The clan was unsure of what it meant, but they agreed it may very well have something to do with Crowpelt, or at least that's what the clan had thought. Hailstar announced her as deputy, and he knew Pumpkinswipe would agree. Crowpelt also, due to his injuries from last year, has a weaker leg than most cats. But moving on to Ghost Puddle. As I said before, Burnclaw and Dayshade's pranks have pretty much been driving her insane. She doesn't understand where all the flowers are coming, and they're a constant reminder of the cat she hates the most. She was, however, thinking about taking an apprentice, but didn't see any potential in the leader's kits, and decided to wait. I'm starting to think that when she dies, we'll just be left without a medicine cat for a while. She doesn't seem to be wanting to take an apprentice and is starting to get too old to, at least I believe, properly train them. Not to mention, with how snappy she's been lately, I think her apprentice would just be scared of her. The next cat is actually a new face. Her name is Burn. She's 85 moons old, charismatic, and has helpful insight. She's also extremely clever. I was actually thinking about changing her name, especially after Burnclaw's death, but I haven't actually gone through with it. She was found by Pumpkinswipe, Ziggy, and Crowpelt with a severe head damage, which she only recovered from shortly after the massacre. She wanted to thank Pumpkinswipe. She wanted to thank all of them, truthfully. If it hadn't been for her, she probably would have died. Burn was given an apprentice as well. Her name's Pepperpaw, but she'll be talked about later. Now let's start with Hailstar's kits. First up is Carp Lake. Her mentor died in the massacre, and she was then mentored by Ziggy for the remaining time of her apprenticeship. She too was one of the cats that had the ground cave in beneath her. She also sustained head damage, and much like what happened with Amberpaw, Willowpaw was there. Carplake never blamed her for anything, but Carplake did go through severe shock after all of the deaths. No one really noticed till they saw her just go into autopilot while hunting or on patrol. There was no emotion behind her eyes, nothing. It wasn't till they sat her down and talked to her that she slowly started to become herself again. She was later given her name for her wit, even in a dark time. This is one of the reasons her little brother started following her around. Pollen Paw is the youngest of Bleak Path's kits, playful and interested in all sorts of odd things. He also has an energy that the clan thought he'd grow out of when he became an apprentice. But no matter how much work his mentor, Patch Trail, puts him to, he always seems to come back with even more energy. And when he heard he'd be mentored by his big sister, he was ecstatic. He's the kind of cat who understands everything that's going on and knows he wouldn't be judged for crying or being upset, but a part of him just can't. He keeps the clan smiling. At least, that's what he tells himself. Next is actually his mentor, whose design kind of changed. I realized it made more sense for her ears to be spotted than it did for Amberpaw's, so I just made both of them have spotted ears. Patch Trail was given her name for her ferocity, and through her training she became a bit more bloodthirsty. She wishes she had been there with Bonecatcher and the rest of the patrol, thinking she might have been able to help. She already had a close relationship with Bleakpath, her being her mentor, but when she graduated, Bleakpath couldn't have been prouder. Watching the shy, timid apprentice she had once had to coax out of the apprentice den be named not only a warrior, but a fierce one at that. A few moons after the massacre, Patch Trail was by herself when she picked up the scent. Without thinking, she tracked it down, and when she spotted the source, she lunged herself at the rogue she had found quickly, who ran away, not fighting at all. She thought about following the scent, but thought twice. She couldn't. It could have been an ambush, and though she wanted revenge, she didn't think she stood much a chance. This rogue could very well be important, and we'll talk about her towards the end of the video. Next we have Willow Dream, and I'm aware that the video is out of sync with what I'm saying. She was named this for her patience, but only awkwardly thanked her clanmates before weaving through the crowd. She wanted to be alone, after so many of her family and friends had blamed her for what had happened. She had started to withdraw from everyone. She was now lonesome, but surprisingly good at mediating. At some point during the year, she was trapped in the den of a monster by Two Legs. She managed to escape, but scratched her pelt pretty badly. And lastly, but certainly not least, was Icy Paw and Pepper Paw. Pepper Paw is the one who appears more emotional within this. She's actually the oldest, and is currently being mentored by Burn, who gives off a bit of an intimidating and just downright terrifying demeanor towards apprentices, but is truly very sweet to her. And Icy Paw nearly bounded over to Ziggy, swearing to be the best warrior the clan had ever seen. There's not too much to say about these apprentices, but I think they're adorable. So many clashing personalities. And as I said at the beginning, I forgot a cat. Her name's Faded Tail. She was fleeing something. I'm aware I could go back and draw her, but I really just don't feel like it. I'll draw her next year. She actually went out shortly before retiring, only to be caught by Two Legs. Riseclan put out the word to all local groups of cats, mostly loners and kitty pets, still not quite trusting the rogues. Despite all of that, there weren't any signs of Faded Tail, but eventually she made it back to camp where she belongs. one of the apprentices actually formed a really close bond with her and was very distraught to hear when she disappeared. And lastly, an outsider I'd actually like your guys' opinion on. It's the one Patch Trail was caught fighting. She's a rogue named Pheasant, but I don't think she's a part of the rogue group that attacked our clan. She seems far too timid for that. And my interpretation of the prophecy we received was that someone with a name either with a bird in it or something with wings would do something. What, I'm not too sure. At first I thought either a kestrel stripe or a crow pelt, but when kestrel died, it only left crow pelt. And then Pheasant appeared. So I want to know if y'all think we should invite Pheasant into the clan. Which means this video will most likely be posted very early, just so I can get a jump start into year 4. But with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed, and to see y'all next time.